Philadelphia, everybody acknowledges it's a Barkley offense and Jalen throws less. But if you look at Green Bay, I'm actually seeing the same thing, where it's a Josh Jacobs, LaFleur offense and Jordan Love, who they like, who has excellent weapons, is throwing less. And I find it fascinating because when LaFleur was in Tennessee, he had Derrick Henry. And his reputation, I remember making calls. People said, I don't know about creating a culture, but he likes to pound the ball. And it feels like we're finally seeing his offense.
Well, it's the year of the running back. We're going to have probably 5 or 6 backs with over 300 carries. We had none last year, and Josh Jacobs will be one of those backs, barring an injury. And they start with the run game, and they're very multiple with their run game. That's the thing. You're seeing a lot more multiplicity with teams that run the ball, and the Packers are a great example. All the use of different backfield actions. They play with 2 running backs, what we call the pony package. A lot of teams are doing this. The Packers are one of the teams doing it quite a bit. And they're so multiple with their run game concepts, the way they use Jaden Reed in the backfield with different motions. So it all starts with the run game, but it's not old school run game, Colin, where you just line up and give it to the back and say, let's bang it up in there. They're very, very multiple, a lot of different formation looks, a lot of different personnel, a lot of different motions.
You know, he took what I was going to say. I always hate when they say, I know what I'm about to say. I'm like, yeah, well, what I love about the Packers run game is that it's not just, hey, we're going to hand the ball off and, there you go. That it's a lot more intelligent. It's a lot more intentional and innovative. And then he just said it. And I'm like, no, that's what I was about to say. You just took what I was about to say, man. Come on, Greg. You gotta give me some room here. But, yeah, I agree. This has always been my pet peeve, though. Which I've kind of talked about with Colin, where he says, like, oh, they're doing this with Jalen Hurts and stuff. And it's like, and then they're doing it with Jordan Love. It's like, and they do it with Josh Allen. And they do it with Patrick Mahomes. And they do it with Lamar Jackson. All the teams want to do that. All of them. They all want to be able to do it. Not all teams can. Now, I think there was a period of time when the NFL was kind of getting away from that. And then, running backs got devalued, et cetera, et cetera. But it's obviously a true, path to success. Absolutely. And I think also, this is also a really underappreciated aspect of when you ask your quarterback to do less. When you ask your quarterback to do less, you're asking him to throw less and whatnot, obviously. Now, the reality is, and I don't think a lot of people ever think like this, and you see this more with pitching, of course, because you're throwing again and again and again. You're throwing 100 times, typically minimal, or around 100 times or so. Fatigue matters. Fatigue absolutely matters. Your heart rate matters, all of this. And they kind of talked about that's actually what's one of like Steph Curry's superpowers, actually, is his level of conditioning. Even though he doesn't look conditioned, the way how he runs and puts his head down, he honestly looks like he's like an old man playing in an old man's league. It doesn't really look that agile. Honestly, it's always made me smile. But the way his level of conditioning is that when it is time to shoot, because once your heart rate reaches like a certain point, I'm just going to make up a number here, but like 100 beat, it also depends on, your level of conditioning. But once it reaches like 150 beats per minute, like your ability to be as accurate, to control your body is going to be different. Just go for a run and try to have a conversation. Your ability to have a conversation is now significantly compromised. Even just thinking, someone asks you a question while you're running, you're like, it takes you extra long because your body is literally not operating as efficiently as it would as if you're just sitting down and relaxing and in a more, neutral state. When you ask your quarterback to throw the ball again and again and again, and also running around as well, it's all cumulative. So even if you're asking your quarterback just to do less, not only now is it making their lives easier, but it's also allowing them, for when they are asked to make a throw, make a play, they're going to be able to do so at a higher level, at a higher rate, with more consistency, because you're not now putting them in a deficit. And again, it really matters. It really adds up. And I think that's something that the Packers have done a beautiful job. And I think that's what also a lot of these coaches understand more and more. I think also the more we understand, because this is what you've seen in basketball, baseball, analytics, and all that type of stuff. And although football analytics has caught up in terms of like when to go for it on 4th down and when to go for a 2-point conversion versus a 1-point conversion, all of that. But I think also the understanding of the body and understanding of how do we actually just maximize this individual athlete in any given moment. And I think that also goes a long way. And again, I really believe that it matters more than a lot of people give it credit for. And like I said, just go for a jog and then just try to write on a piece of paper, hey, my name's John, what's going on? I'd love to hang out with you, but whatever, just make up something. And you'll see like, oh, my handwriting is not as good as it was. Like everything just changes. You're like, what was I supposed to write? I don't even know. Like everything gets compromised. And so if you're able to come with a more balanced approach, I really think that also ultimately you're in a different position when you're talking about a special quarterback like a Jordan Love. It allows you to be even more dangerous than, say, another quarterback who has maybe of a more like, okay, how do I want to phrase this? You have some special quarterbacks, some special athletes, like the Steph Currys, like the Mahomes of the world, where no matter how tired they are, they'll still be able to bring it to a very high level. You've seen any of these players talk about this with LeBron James. Basketball is also a really good comparison of this. Anyone who's ever played or against LeBron, they can tell late in the game he is still recovered in a way that these other players are not. And again, it's more than just endurance. It's more than just, I'm not huffing and puffing as much. It's like the way your body and your muscles can literally contract. So that at the core is also what separates truly elite players and elite athletes from even just great ones. It is a signature. Although you can be a great athlete and still actually have that ability of a Mahomes, but just don't have the skill set to like back it up enough. But that's a different discussion. So with Jordan Love, though, first off, I'm not really sure what Jordan Love is in that regard. I think it takes a little bit more time for you to really be able to reliably see that. I think it's too early on in his career to like be solidified with that. But even so, I am very confident that he truly does have an elite talent set, an elite, talents, that when you do kind of take some off his plate and allow him to be fresher, allow him to be able to be more consistent, when you are talking about late in these games, he's going to have the ability to be able to pick you apart. I mean, he's just that gifted that it is kind of like, holding them back for when you really need them. It's kind of holding back your special for when you really need it to be special. And again, there's so many different ways to look at this. And I think in this aspect, when you're talking about what the Packers like to do, and especially what you're going to need the Packers to do late in games in the playoffs, when you can build upon a run game and rely on some of these quarterbacks to kind of do less and then say, okay, we need to call your number. Like, we've already seen it to a degree with the Packers and why we've seen them be able to kind of take off in second halves. We saw that with Jordan Love, ironically, against two division rivals, against the Lions and the Vikings, where it was like that second half, it was like, here we go. We're going to really need you to kind of bring it, and we can. And now he's doing it technically in a deficit in terms of, condition, in terms of energetic deficit. If you can now really rely on kind of saving him a little bit in that second half, it's like he will be even better. It's literally physically impossible for him to not be better. You can play into the game and get into rhythm, but that's not really conditioning. That's more mental. That's more getting settled, figuring out the flow of the game. That's something different. But in terms of like being fresher and just having like, I'm ready to go, I really can't emphasize enough how much that can actually have a major impact. Major impact. And it's why so often we can see some of these players late in games just absolutely erupt because they're fresher than everyone else because they have not been utilized. They have not been expended, or it's why we see so many running backs. I just saw the dumbest stat ever, and it drove me nuts yesterday, where it was like, Derrick Henry's on pace to have a 389-yard game, and it was like the first quarter, and yeah, he had like a great first quarter, whatever, and same thing with Saquon, you know, a week or so ago before, and it was like, he's not going to maintain that. He's not going to be able to maintain that. Like, it's too much. We know, just because they're technically on that pace doesn't mean even if they give him the ball that many times to continue that pace, he's not going to be able to put up that production unless he gets really lucky and is able to break off for another like huge like 80-yard run or something. You only have so much of that in you. And so when you have the run game like this, and when it's as dynamic and as creative, when you can consistently put up 140 plus yards, I just think it ends up being greater than what just the basic math tells us. What the basic, it really is not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = 22. But those think about the Packers and how this run game has not only improved the offense from just like a game plan aspect, but also how it's helped Jordan Love and the offense as a whole. Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.